Good afternoon, class. I hope you have had a great day so far. So right now we are going to be going over the answers to the worksheets that you have done for homework for today. And so for our first problem, number 18, we want to find what W equals. So how we do that is to get the variable on a side by itself. So let's add 7 to both sides. So W will equal 18. We're going to do the same with every other one like this. And so for number 19, we subtract 3 from both sides. And since negative 9, subtracting a 3, that is going to be K equals negative 12. Because on a number line, we have negative 9, and we want to subtract 3 from it. So we go back 1, 2, 3. So there's negative 10, negative 11, and negative 12. Now for 20, we need to add 8 to both sides since it's getting subtracted from the Q. And so for this one, negative 1 plus 8, for the number line, if we start at negative 1 and we add 8, so there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll be at 7, because if you count how many times I did the little jump, that's 8 times. So then that will get us to 7. So Q equals 7. Now on to 21. That's similar to many that we have done before, where we just subtract the number from both sides to get R alone. So 9 minus 2 equals 7, which will make 7, which will make R 7. And for our last one, it's the same as 21, except just bigger numbers. And so we'll subtract 15 from both sides. And with this, 11 minus 15, there you're subtracting a number bigger than what you originally have, so you know it will be a negative number. And 11 minus 15, that's going to get you a negative 4. Now for the next 3 problems, we are going to be creating our own equation and then solving for the variable. And so for 23, the Miami Heat scored 79 points. This was 13 points less than the Chicago Bulls. How many points did the Chicago Bulls score? So in order to create our own equation, we need to find the important information in the word problem. And so we know that 79 is important and the number 13 less is important. So you can write your equations two different ways. So we can have 79 plus the 13, because since we know we want to add that, since 79 is 13 points less than what the other team scored. And so we can equal that to our variable S, or it can be any letter that you desire. Or else you can have the Chicago Bulls score subtracting 13, since it's 13 more than the Miami Heat, who had 79. And whichever one sorry, that looks like a 5. That's an S. But whatever equation you use, you're going to get the same answer. And so whatever way you figure it out, an S will equal 92. Now for 24, it's a similar way where we want to find the important numbers, which are 15 and a half years old and 3 years younger. And how old is Lou? So you can do the 2 equations similar that we did to the previous problem. So you can have 15 and a half. And since that's younger, we would want to add the 3 to find how old the other person is, which we can say is Y, or any letter that you want. The other way you can do it is to have y minus 3, because since y is 3 years older, to equal the 15.5. And then whichever way you did, you would just need to solve for y, which either equation you did, you will still get y equals 18.5 years old. Now for 25, a confusing part is even with par, because what is par? Well, par equals 0. So we want these 4 scores over here to add up to equal 0. So in order to write an equation, we can do -1 plus -3 plus s plus 2 equals 0. And so in order to find out what s is, we want to get these 3 numbers on the other side. And so we can add 1, add another 3, and so there we have s plus 2 equals 4, and then we need just to subtract that 2 from each side, and so s is going to equal 2. Now for these next 9 problems, they're very similar to the to problems 18 through 22, but for these, our numbers are in decimal and fraction forms, so we have to be a little more careful with the work we do. But starting with number 26, that one is similar to just adding the number to both sides to get the variable alone. So we add 3.5 to both sides. And so A is going to equal 18.4. And then same with 27, except we want to subtract the 2.25 from both sides. So 1 minus 2.25, that is going to get B to equal -1.25. Now with 28, that's a little different because it involves fractions. And something we need to do for subtracting or adding fractions is that we need a common denominator. And so we need to find the least common multiple of 3 and 4. And what is that? Well, that's going to be 12. So we need to switch each of these to be over 12. And so 3 times what gets you 12? Well, that's 4. So we need to multiply the numerator by 4. And so that is going to get us 4/12. And don't forget about that negative sign. So we have -4/12 equals R minus what times 4 equals 12? Well, that's 3. So we multiply the numerator by 3 as well. And so that is going to get us 9. So our new equation is -4/12 equals R minus 9/12. And so now we just do the exact same thing. We add 9/12 to both sides. And so now we have -4/12 plus 9/12, which 9 is the positive one. So let's just subtract that -4 from 9 to get us 5. And we keep the denominator the same. So R equals 5/12. Now moving on to 29. 29, 30, and 31 are going to be very similar to each other. They're just adding the number to both sides. And so for 29, we have plus 2.8 on both sides. And that is going to get us x equals to 12.3. For 30, we're going to add 8.5 to both sides. And for this one, we're adding 8.5 onto a -2.1. And so that is going to get us R equals 6.4. And then 31 is just like 30. We're adding a number to both sides. and we're adding it to a negative number. And so z is going to equal 5.8. Oops, sorry, that does not look like an 8. Now here 32, that is a fraction, dealing with fractions, so we're going to need to get a common denominator between those two. And 6 goes into 12, so we actually just need to change this one right here. And that is going to be m plus 10 twelfths equals 11 twelfths. And it's 10 twelfths because 6 goes into 12 two times, so we multiply it by 2, and so 5 times 2 is 10. And so we need to subtract the 10 twelfths from both sides, and so m is going to equal 1 twelfth, because 11 minus the 10 is the 1, and then the denominator stays the same. Now for 33, we're going to do the exact same thing. The negative 5/6 turns into a negative 10 twelfths, and then plus c equals a negative 11 twelfths. And so now you see we have a common denominator, and now we can get c to be alone. And so in order to do that, we need to add 10 twelfths because it's a negative sign, so we do the opposite sign and we add it to both sides. And so negative 11 twelfths plus 10 twelfths will make c equal negative 1 twelfths. And it's negative because negative 11 plus 10 is negative 1. And we keep the denominator the same at 12. Now for 34, we're dealing with a little different numbers, 9 and 18 for the denominators, and that we see that the least common multiple is 18. And so we're going to change this fraction here to 2/18 because 9 goes into 18 two times, and so we multiply that numerator by the 2 to get us negative 2/18. And so that equals to negative, or not negative, positive 5/18. Whoop. And so then we need to add 2/18 to both sides because of the subtracting 2/18. We need to add because of the opposite signs. And so s is going to equal 7/18. Now on to worksheet for page 451 in your books. And so now we need to solve the equation, but this time instead of addition and subtraction, we are dealing with multiplication and division. And so we're doing the exact same thing where we do the opposite sign. And so for multiplication, the opposite is division, obviously, and division is multiplication. So for our first one, we have 7 times a equals 49. And so to get that a, that variable by itself, we need to divide the 7 from both sides. And we know 49 divided by 7 equals 7. And we're going to do that the same thing to number 2, where we get x by itself, so we divide by 2 on both sides. And so negative 6 divided by 2 is going to get you negative 3, because when you divide by when you have a negative and a positive, that's going to give you a negative. But like for number 3, we're dividing by a negative 4 from a negative 32. A negative with a negative makes it a positive. So that is going to be b equals positive 8. Now for the next two, we have a problem with division. So u divided by 6 equals 9. And so in order to get that u by itself, we need to multiply by 6 on both sides. And so u equals 54, because 9 times 6 equals 54. Now for 5, we're going to do the exact same thing. We get c by itself by multiplying by negative 10 to both sides. And so C is going to equal a positive 80 because multiplying by a negative and a negative number will get you a positive number. Now for 6, we're going to get D alone, and so we divide by a negative 9 on both sides. And so 54 divided by a negative 9 is going to get you a negative number, and so it's going to be D equals negative 6. And same with number 7, we're going to get Y by itself by dividing the negative 12 to both sides. And so 60 divided by negative 12 is going to get you Y equals a negative 5 because we'll have a positive and a negative number. For number 8, we have a division problem, so we need to multiply. And to get R by itself, we need to multiply by 20 on both sides. And so R is going to equal negative 40 because you're multiplying that 20 by a negative number. For number 9, we're going to do the exact same thing by multiplying 10 to both sides to get the variable G alone, which is going to get you negative 90.